dollar bill was laughing as it flew into the air. It flew into the street and some people gathered there. Everyone was jumping up to get it in their hand. Everyone was jumping up in the promised land. And it's somewhere in the synagogue, very late at night, there burns an olive oil lamp, it's the eternal light. And from the Aron Kodesh, a cry is heard once more. And if you look real close, you can see the teardrops on the floor. One day a dollar bill was floating through the air. It flew into a synagogue and no one else was there. It landed on the bima and it tried to go to sleep. But from the Aron Kodesh, a voice began to speak. Who's in my synagogue? The dollar bill said I've come here from America. There's nothing I can't buy. That's why people worship me. Now tell me, who are you? My name is the Torah, and everything I say is true. Tell me, Torah, why do you speak so sad? You live in this nice synagogue, I think you should be glad. I've always lived with Israel, the Torah did reply. But my people do not listen, I just wonder why. The dollar bill was laughing as it flew into the air. It flew into the street and some people gathered there. Everyone was jumping up to get it in their hand. Everyone was jumping up in the promised land. And it's somewhere in the synagogue, very late at night, there burns an olive oil lamp, it's the eternal light. And from the Aron Kodesh, a cry is heard once more. And if you look real close, you can see the teardrops on the floor. One day a dollar bill.
Parshat Mishpatim is all about laws, detailed rules pertaining to all kinds of life circumstances. Slavery, assault and battery, sex, ox goring, judicial corruption, holiday observances, treatment of the poor, the kind of stuff that would keep rabbis busy for centuries. The Torah is famous for long lists of God's laws, and this is the first one in the Torah. But though we read it now as a list or a law code, Parshat Mishpatim is really a story, and the laws are actually a long speech from God to Moses. Moses is supposed to somehow relay all these laws to the people, though he isn't told how. First, Moses recounts what God said, and the people respond, Na'aseh, we will do. But then Moses does something strange. He writes the laws down in a scroll, a sefer, and reads it to the children of Israel. When he is done reading, the children of Israel add to their acceptance of God's laws the powerful phrase, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, or we will do and we will obey. After the book is accepted, Moses ascends the mountain, along with Aaron, Aaron's sons, and 70 elders, for a most bizarre encounter with the divine. Atop the mountain, they glimpse God. What exactly they see, the text leaves to our imagination, but we are told that under God's legs was something like a pedestal of sapphire bricks, as clear as the skies. Strange stuff. But the point is that all along, it turns out, this parsha was about divine revelation. The people glimpse God with different senses, through multiple media, and in different ways. In this parsha, it's not about the thunderbolts or the stone tablets that made it into the famous movie. Instead, it's about the laws, the pedestal, and above all, the book. Jews often describe themselves as people of the book. But what does that mean, apart from the stereotype of Jews as nerdy bookworms? The Jewish religion is heavy on reading. Torah scrolls, prayer books, thick volumes of Talmud in crowded study halls. But so far we haven't heard much about books in the Torah. And Moses' decision to go the book route with God's laws is pretty momentous. Why does Moses do it? The people had just heard his account. And these are the children of Israel who witnessed divine revelation on Mount Sinai, who directly perceived the sound and fury of God's voice. What do they need books for? Maybe Moses was afraid he'd forget, or that he'd be suspected of inaccuracy. Maybe he figured that written laws would be less likely to be amended or discarded. Maybe he wanted the law to be the special possession of some literate elite. Or maybe, even in a story where God speaks directly to human beings, writing can serve as an object of fascination and sanctity. After all, even people who live together sometimes decide to commit certain messages to paper.
Okay. Hope this works on our old software. Okay, so far, David, things seem to be working okay. And so we want to talk about some of these rules, some of these laws. We have a wide variety of them in this. Hopefully we have it down under control now. Is it better? Partying here? No, not me. Okay, I'm back to being fine. Great. Okay, good news. Now we have the delay time, so if I was having a party, you would all be invited. You'd have to bring your own food, and we could get together online. So there we are. So we're talking about Mishpatim this week. Now we basically have two types of laws in the Torah. So, law type number 1 equals Mishpatim. Okay, I sent that. That didn't appear. Let's try that again. So our first type of law equals Mishpatim. There we go. Mishpatim are the laws that make sense to us. When we say, if you dig a hole, put a cover on it so people don't fall in, because if somebody falls in, you're responsible. That is a Mishpatim type of law. If we say, when you build a new house and you put your roof on it, don't forget to put a fence around that roof, because in the ancient world, people lived on their roofs. That was a Mishpatim kind of law. So when we're talking here, these are most of these are the laws that we understand. They make sense to us. We know why they put them into place. We know why we should be nice to the stranger in our midst. We understand why when we harvest our crops, not to harvest them in a complete square, but to, I hope this shows up, but to harvest them in kind of an oval, and we leave the corners for the poor. That's kind of like our community welfare plan, so that the hungry are getting fed. And let's see, what else is there? The law about the donkey. If you see the donkey of your neighbor and the neighbor's donkey is overburdened, it doesn't matter whether you like your neighbor or you can't stand your neighbor's guts and you hate him. Your responsibility is not to your neighbor, it's to your neighbor's donkey to help lessen his burden. If the donkey's burden is so much that the donkey falls over in the street, again, irregardless of your feelings towards the donkey's owner, you have to help the donkey get back up. You have to help the owners with the donkey until the donkey's back up on its feet, its load is resettled, and it's ready to move forward with its burdens, irregardless of what you feel about the neighbor. However, what do you do with the donkey if you find the donkey roaming loose in the street? You know who the donkey belongs to. You got to do your best, catch that donkey, and you take the donkey back to your neighbor because it belongs to the neighbor, not to you. Even if it belongs to the neighbor you don't like and can't stand the sight of. The law is animal friendly, Shlomo. You are perfectly correct there. Now, based on this, we return the donkey. Now, we know our rabbis like to put what they call fences around the Torah. What they do is they stretch the law out so that the law can encompass more than just its literal meaning. So the rabbis created the fences further out on this one, and the fences help us keep the original law while expounding and applying it to new citizens and to new rules and to new situations. Right, if you don't know whose donkey it is, you are to take care of it until the owner comes by for it. That is absolutely correct. But the law about returning the donkey was extended and expounded upon. And those of you, I know we have a lot of converts in our class this evening and in our community. This is the law that the rabbis expounded upon for converts. How do you think you get a convert out of a donkey? Any ideas on this question? Any comments that you'd like to make? And remember, we have to be polite to one another. We're being nice to our community. So what do you think the rabbis did with this to get to converts? I'll give you a minute. It's possible, Shlomo, yes, some of these rules could come from before. A lot of them are similar to codes that we find in the Ugaritic texts and the Phoenician texts. Oh, look at that. David is on a roll. Return the convert to its home. So what's its home? What's the convert's home? A convert is considered a lost item. Why is a convert considered a lost item? I can hear your minds churning and ticking with this, thinking, what on earth were the rabbis thinking? Converting, that's correct, yeah, converting, with an N. Finding his Jewish soul, converted, that's past tense. Converting is participle. Convert is the noun. And we're not talking about the donkey being the convert here. So what else you guys got for me? Has to do with that. Not sure how to word it. Anyone else have any comments? Lanny? Haven't heard from you yet. Yeah, you're kind of on track here. You guys you're on a roll. You're almost there. What Addie said, yeah, okay. I'm surprised we haven't heard anything from Lanny. This is his kind of conversation. He must be thinking really hard. A convert is considered to be a lost item because they have wandered away from their original religion. And now they are lost and going like little sheep out in the street, and they're trying to figure out where they belong. And they wander into our communities and decide they want to stay here. Well, because we have an obligation and a duty to return a lost item to its owner, our rabbis will turn away a convert and send them back to where they came from. Because we are not in the habit of gathering up lost things and keeping them for ourselves. That's not allowed. Well, the convert will come back again. Maybe. If the convert comes back again, the same convert, the rabbis, most of them will send them on their way and return them. Right, we send them back to their religion because we return lost things to their original owner. And so we want to send them back to where they came from because we know they do not belong to us. Well, if that specific convert comes back again, now the rabbis will start a conversation because we have fulfilled our obligation of trying to return the lost item to their community, and the lost item has chosen not to go back. So now we open the conversation to potential conversion. And Adi is right. David is right, because once you convert in, you are and always are, was, will be, ever time. 300 times in your case. Wow, you were really a lost item, weren't you? And the rabbis were really out to return you. But it looks to me like you just didn't go. And yeah, once you convert in, then you're Jewish. It becomes your bloodline as well as your, well, potentially your racial line, your religious line. Your family become part of the Mishpatim of Jews. Right. But we want to make sure, rabbis want to make sure that you do indeed have a Jewish soul and that you do indeed understand the seriousness of leaving whatever you were behind and converting into Judaism. It is not a commitment to take on lightly. Those of you who have converted in know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you're stuck. You join the family and you're stuck. You not only get us liberal folks, you get those weird Orthodox cousins and our ultra Orthodox cousins, because we're all the same family, but some of us are weirder than others, which you find in most families in the world. You know, you got the cousins that are great, and then you got the cousins you don't really want to hang out with, and then you got those cousins that you really wish didn't belong to you, but they do, so you're stuck with them. And you can meet them at family reunions, and hopefully you all get along well together, and you find commonality in the concept that you're all the same family, no matter what your observance level is. The Nanaks, huh? I'm not familiar with the Nanaks. Are they the way out weirdo cousins of the Jewish family? The Jewish Mishpacha? Mishpacha is family. Oh, yeah, well, I'll sit with my Chabad friends, but I make sure that if I sit somewhere near where the men are sitting, that I dress appropriately for their community so I don't embarrass them. So, I'd have to have more buttons at the top of this blouse than where it is. And, no, I don't know about the petek either. Oh, Rebbe Nachman. Rebbe Nachman, I know. I'm familiar with him. Okay. So, Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. In fact, I have a quote from him at the bottom of my email. Oh, they did the cool techno. Yeah. So when I sit with my Hasidic brothers and sisters, I make sure I dress appropriately so I don't embarrass them. I don't offer to shake hands. Yeah. With their men folk, I don't offer hugs. But in a sense, I don't have to worry if I sit with the men because I know they're not going to touch me. They're not going to come up and try and get overly friendly. Yeah. So, yep. See, I don't live in a big city. I live on an island off the coast. We don't have, those kind. So I guess they are like the really weirdo cousins on the outside edge, huh? Okay. Tone deaf chassids. Ooh, that could be scary. Now, let's talk about another piece. Where are we? Okay, not that far yet. Let's talk about another one of the mitzvah. 21, where am I? Okay, here we go. The Mishpatim is divided up. The first section are the laws of worship, serfdom, and injuries. So we're talking about that. Don't make the gods of silver. Don't make gods of gold. Instead, we have people who made gods of the almighty American dollar. And that's why the Aron HaKodesh in the synagogue, in the shul, was crying, because people don't come to see him anymore. They're busy worshiping the altar. Now we get the rules of slaves. If you acquire a Hebrew slave, he will serve 6 years, and in the 7th year go free without any payment. If he's single, if you got him when he was single, he leaves single. If he had his wife, he can take a wife with him. If the master gave him a wife and she bore him children, the wife and the children belong to the master. But if the slave says, well, I'm not going free because I love my wife, I love my children, I want to stay with them, then the master takes him before God and pierces his ear with an awl, and the slave will remain a slave for the rest of his life. Now, as a side effect, during the American Civil War in the 1860s, if you had to make a guess, what percentage of Jewish families do you think might have owned slaves in the South? Of Southern Jewish families, what kind of a percentage would you make a guess at that owned slaves in the South? And not Hebrew slaves. They owned black slaves. Oh, I can see your minds ticking. Good. Mm-hmm. Materials I was reading over the weekend say that in the city, approximately 87% of the Jews in the city owned black slaves. And these particular slaves, no, that's not a percent. It's okay, we'll forgive you. And the slaves that these Jewish families had were domesticated servants. So they did the housework, they acted as the cook, the cleaning lady, the maid, the nanny, the butler, the carriage driver, and so on, so on. They did not have most Jews were not farmers, they did not have plantations, they did not have field slaves, they just had household help. I would have to find, it was one of the Jewish research, because I just did a presentation on this. I'll find the number for you and have it, and I'll find the reference for you this week too, Lanny. I'll make a note to find that tonight. But it must have been really weird for Jewish families. I know it would be weird for me to sit down at a Passover Seder where I'm talking about being enslaved to the Egyptians and being God redeemed us and we got our freedom while being served my Passover dinner by black slaves. That would kind of creep me out. So I'll find that reference for you. Yes, Jews were quite active in the slave trade. There were various rabbis who ruled against actual trading, but there were Jewish slave traders in Charleston. Right. Now, this is historical research because I interpret a Jewish woman from the war period whose name is Mrs. Eugenia Phillips. Eugenia Phillips Levy and Levy family of Charleston, South Carolina, who was a slave and a spy. And she wanted her slaves because who else was going to take care of her 9 children? She didn't have time. So, anyway, back to that. Now, men could sell their daughters off as slaves, but mothers could not sell their sons. And if a man sells off his daughter for a slave, she doesn't get to go free, as the men do. If she proves to be displeasing to the master, then the master must let her be redeemed. He cannot sell her to somebody else because he broke faith with her. So when the father sells his daughter into slavery, basically he's selling her to be a concubine to the master himself. And then if he's displeased, he can't sell her off. Right, women had different rules. But we have, of course, all the women that were the exception to the rule. Now, if the master has designated the girl for his son, then he should deal with her the same way he would deal with a free girl. And if it just says if he marries another, he must not withhold this one from food, clothing, or conjugal rights. But if he holds her and takes away her food, takes away her clothing, and ignores her rights of conjugation or conjugal rights, then he must let her go free without any kind of payment. And interestingly enough, good, then you should have juicy good stuff on this. And then in the next verse, what do we get? He who fatally strikes a man shall be put to death. We jump from women slaves in marriage to being put to death for fatally striking a man. And if somebody doesn't do it by design, but it came about by an act of God, then there will be a place for them to go to. And these will be the cities of refuge that we see talked about further on in the Torah. Yeah, I can see that used as a technique for cheaper marriage for their daughter. because ketuvah prices were sometimes being excessive. And they can be a little bit excessive today too, because they're categorized to the Consumer Price Index. And that lovely little rock you put on the bride's finger is supposed to be valued at enough that if divorce happens, that ring could be sold and used to support the bride for an entire year. So if you've read the ketuvim lately, they are quite there. Okay, now, that's another note altogether. So then we have this, and we end up having cities of refuge. But when a man schemes against another, we have premeditated murder here and kills him treacherously, then that is to be put to death. And also, if it's the case of widowhood or so, then what will happen is the ketuvah monies are paid before the oldest son receives his inheritance. Because the number one responsibility is to take care of the widow. Yeah, an early era prenup. It was to protect women. Let's see. She gets a nose ring, bracelets at the well. Are you marrying Rebecca? I hate to tell you, David, but she's already taken. Well, welcome, Eliora. We are reading chapter 21 in Exodus. Yeah, you find all the best gossip and all the best people hanging out at the well. Today, the well is also known as the bar. You can always meet women and guys at the bar. So I guess that's our modern day well sort of thing. So when we go into the laws of death and what is death for this and what do you get that, and when men quarrel and strike, and if they get up and they walk outside. So we have all these other little duty-wops. Then we go back, and a man who strikes his slave, doesn't matter, male or female, with a rod, and the slave dies right then and there, the slave must be avenged. But if the slave survives a day or two, he is not to be avenged. Yeah, water coolers at work, yep. It was a copper nod tin wiring custom made in Israel, and it's the coolest proposal, whatever. Oh, okay. It was copper and tin ring, custom made. Got it. Tuned in at just the right time. Yes, you did, Eliora. So welcome. We're glad to have you. Now, here we come up with one of those verses that's often mistranslated and misunderstood. We have when the men fight and one of them pushes the pregnant woman and has a miscarriage but no other damage, the pusher is fined according to the woman's husband, what the woman's husband exacts. Payment based on reckoning. But if other damage ensues, payment will be life for life. And then we have eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and bruise for bruise. How do you understand that verse? Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and bruise for bruise. Okay, David, you like this part? Tell us, how do you understand this? You found this boring? Okay. So how do you understand this besides just boring? Okay, you're getting your payback. And how are you getting your payback? How are you extracting payback from this? Ah, okay, got it. You're interested in hearing the discussion. Okay, well, this is what we're going to discuss. So how do you understand it? Different interpretations, says Lanny. Some believe monetary value in exchange for the laws. Oh, David, you're going to extract his eyeball. Okay. And Shlomo's going to think before he actually hurts somebody. So he's going to give it some thought here. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Ellie. That whatever you do to others would be done to you, says Shlomo. Okay. So how did you understand this when you read this, Ellie? We know you're interested in the discussion. How did you understand this? What did you get out of these verses right here? Okay. Seems to me that it just means there are consequences for actions. But I understand, says David, that it's a monetary thing and not what I would like. How do you know it's a monetary thing? It doesn't say that in the text. How did you get that out of there? I get consequences for actions out of the text. I get Shlomo's comment, whatever you do is done back to you. How do you get, Lanny and David, how do you get monetary value out of this? It's okay, that's why we have Torah study. Karma comes into this as well, yeah. We're not really given an explanation. Tit for tat, yeah. Oh, Lanny told you so. Okay, blame it on Lanny. Well, we're not. I'm good with capital punishment. Okay, yeah. We're not really given an explanation. Shlomo says you do something wrong, you pay for it some way or another, which is correct. Now, the rabbis looked at this and went, that even though this is what the text says, they said, God couldn't have meant that. God couldn't have meant take out somebody's eyeball if I lost mine. God couldn't have meant for me to pull out somebody else's tooth if I lost mine. Well, capital punishment is covered in this reading, Ellie, because this is a mixture of civil law and criminal law. And when we say the penalty shall be life for life, that's right, monetary value is in the Torah. This is one of those ones that the rabbis discussed because they couldn't accept the idea of a literal reading of this text, that if somebody burned you, you had the right to turn around and burn them. They determined that there would be a monetary value. What is the value of that? Yeah, put down the axe handle. You got it. You just have to keep pouting out. Just go ahead and go. Now, see, when we go on to the next verse, it says, when a man strikes the eye of his slave, whether the slave is male or female, it doesn't matter. But if the man destroys the eyeball, then the man shall let the slave go free on account of his eye. Which is not the same as an eye for an eye. We go one more verse down, and said if he knocks out the tooth of his slave, whether it's male or female, doesn't matter, then he, the master, shall let him go free on account of his tooth. Okay. Now, David's put down the axe handle, and we all feel a little safer. Ortho says their main issue was using the eye for eye and not eye for life. They argued that perhaps taking the other's eye could kill them and not just wound them. Right, therefore they concluded it must mean the monetary equivalent of the body part. You are absolutely correct, Ortho. They discussed it upside down, this opinion, that opinion. Every rabbi has an opinion. Ask 3 rabbis, get 5 opinions. And Shlomo said that sounds fair. So they say there is a value and there must be a consequence. But the consequence has to do with the value. So if we're talking an eye for an eye, how do we value an eye? What is the value of the eye? If you lose an eye, how do you earn a living? Does that impact your method of learning? Does it impact your ability to earn a living? What if you take a hand for a hand, or a foot for a foot? And Ellie says, just because it says that doesn't mean I agree. And I might be in the minority, but this is a great excuse to talk about justice and vengeance. There are so many things to discuss in modern justice. Lanny adds, many slaves in biblical times had no other means of support. Set a slave free and he becomes homeless and jobless. So you kind of disagree then that the slave the tooth, the slave should be able to continue to work for a tooth. But would you want a slave in your employment, your household, that only has one eye? $1 per eye, says Ortho. What about mental illness? I don't know. Mental illness doesn't come up. Yeah, we know. $2, $1 per eye. But it's about vengeance. Vengeance is a normal human reaction. Somebody punches you, you just want to take your fist and you want to punch them back. Sometimes you want to take your hands, climb over the top of the desk, and throttle their neck. There's a wide variety of vengeance that we can think of in our human minds and create. But this is saying we can't take vengeance at will. There have to be rules for vengeance. There have to be boundaries around it. What can we do? Ask David about the worth of a sight-limited person. Okay, there you go. Hands, eyes, legs would be problems working. We won't discuss mental illness. That's not covered in this particular text. We'll save that conversation for another day. So if you're limited on sight, it makes it challenging. So the rabbis wanted to make sure, as they continued to discuss the text and expound on the rules and build those fences, that they were building them for the good of the community, and that shalom bayit is the major concept. Peacefulness in the home, peacefulness is in the family. Shlomo says that eyesight is something you don't want to lose, because I was close to losing it. Of course, I have a daughter who, when we were at the mall in the Seattle Center, downtown Seattle, watched a blind gentleman walk up with his companion. He was wearing his sunglasses. He was walking with his cane. And she turns to me and goes, "How does he remember where he parked his car?" Don't you just love teenagers? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Jay, but we're glad that you came in to join us. And blindness has affected your life, hasn't it? What kind of impact have you suffered from that? No. If you are suffering from an illness that hurts you, do you get to apply vengeance in the same way? Okay, now the only way I think you can apply vengeance to the illness that hurts you is to work to cure the illness, or if it requires medication to control it, because sometimes illnesses that are mental illnesses don't necessarily go away. You just learn how to live with them and how to get on the right medications to keep them under control. So I would consider that being applying vengeance to the illness. Okay, Oni on a defenseless pillow. Yeah, my sister used to beat them with the tennis rackets. Okay, so here we go. Should we keep going? What about when the ox? Oh, okay. Well, how do you resolve that? It sounds like a tongue-twisty sort of question, Ellie. If you're suffering from violence, the only way to abate violence is to create peace. I didn't say you had to drop it. You said, I'll drop it. But I hope it doesn't make a big bang when you drop it. Let's see. Shlomo says, my vision did all kinds of crazy things until they fixed it finally. Well, I'm glad to hear they were able to do that. Life in a modern world like ours can be very challenging if you have issues with your sight. Now, we can skip over quite a bit of this text because there's a really weird, so typing makes you sound like a child, ha ha ha. Okay, well, we could do with that. Okay, what about, did you know you can't eat roadkill? There will be no roadkill possum stews in the dinner pan. No smashed snakes. I don't listen to Cyclone 9, but I have had some late night conversations with you, David. Well, good. So let's go ahead and move forward, or we can stay here. Let's talk about a couple of the food things in here. You wouldn't eat roadkill. What about those roadkill cookbooks out there? Somebody must be buying them. Somebody must be eating them. Pick up a possum by the side of the road. Sounds delicious, huh? Except it says that in verse 30 of chapter 22, you shall be holy, you shall be men holy to me. You must not eat flesh torn by the beasts in the field. You must cast it out to the dogs. So no roadkill. You had roadkill deer. Okay. So many typos, I need a real computer. You know, we can translate what you're saying anyway, Ellie. And then, yes, we forgive you, Ellie. Roast possum is a delicacy. Yeah, well, I could do without the roast possum. But then the really fun one is here, is the meat and milk. Not to boil a meat animal in its mother's milk. And that began the rules of kashrut. You don't eat roadkill either? I came from Detroit. We don't eat it there either. But here in the great Southland, a lot of people apparently do eat roadkill. But not, Misha. Roast possum is a delicacy. No, thank you. I could live without. Okay. I had a recipe somewhere. They like it in Alabama. Yeah, they do. It's a southern thing, I think, eating the roadkill. So we're not allowed to do that. Okay, Allie, I've never understood. What? How people eat roadkill? Get a cookbook. Follow the recipe. That's a rabbinical fence. The rabbis, technically, when it says the mammals that we're allowed to eat, the ones that are kosher are, goats, sheep, cattle. Those are the ones that actually this boiling the kid in its mother's milk applies to. Because, a kid is a baby goat. Chicken got in there sometime in the latter half of the 19th century because the rabbi said, wow, look at all these people eating chicken. And they're eating chicken just like we eat meat. Therefore, let's extend our rabbinical offenses to cover chicken. That's a two-part message, yeah. Roadkill deer oh, I'm sorry. I bet your mother was very upset, Shlomo, when she ran over that. Yeah, so that's how chicken got to be considered meat. Now, we keep kosher at our house, but we don't have chicken in the meat category because chicken that doesn't have kids that you can boil in the milk because the only kind of milk that comes from a chicken is eggnog, and that really doesn't quite count. So chickens, like other poultry and other fowl, are technically part. Yeah, well, chicken, the rabbis consider chicken to be meat. Chicken's not meat. Chicken, technically, see, Sephardic, I'm good. Chicken is actually fowl. It's not meat because it doesn't have live babies and it doesn't nurse them with milk. Mammals are meat. Chicken is smother that bird in cheese. Yeah, we do that at our house, but we don't mix meat and milk. Right. And one of the ancient, an archaeological study that they did, they said the happiest bride in town was the bride who got the pre-seasoned yogurt pot. Now, we all know that in the ancient Near East, the Middle East, and even today, yogurt is a very popular food. And they would make their yogurt in clay pots. Well, they learned that if they took their yogurt pots to used them to boil from beef, that putting beef in the... You guys are distracting me here. Okay, if you have the well-seasoned yogurt pot and you cook the beef or the sheep or the goat inside your well-seasoned yogurt pot, you kill off the yogurt bacteria. And then you can no longer make yogurt in your yogurt pot. And archaeologically, that's why many ancient cultures kept separate dishes for meat and kept separate dishes for dairy. So they would not kill off the yogurt bacteria in their yogurt pots. And their cheese bacteria, you can also kill that with beef. I can see that. So let's see. Let's add a couple of these comments. Shlomo, meat and milk, the way... Yeah, let's see. Chicken and eggs are parve, meat and milk. The way is the chance of beef with milk from the mother is very unlikely. Tell that to the vegans. Yada, yada, yada. I only eat chicken and fish, so we are the same in our kosher. Yeah, okay. We only eat chicken and fish at our house as well. Beef is from beef cattle, and milk is from dairy cattle. And chocolate milk comes from brown cows, and white milk comes from white cows. And Oreo cookies come from Oreo cookie cows. I don't know if you've seen those or not. And Jay says, carne asada. Oh yeah, that's right. You're out there in California. All this talk about animals is making us hungry. Well, it's got to be right about dinner time in your time zone. Now I'm in Florida, so it's way past dinner time here. But we are at 8:55, so before we continue our conversation and wind it up, I want to remind you to put another nickel in that little pushka tin. Donate, donate, donate to OneShul punktorah, because this is how we keep the programs running for you. Oh, I've seen them out west. The Oreo cookie cows, the front half of the cow is black, the very back half of the cow is black, and the entire centerpiece of the cow is white. I don't know what they're really called. I just call them Oreo cookie cows because that's what my sister called them. And strawberries come from the rare pink cows. Ooh, the red heifer. That's where we get strawberry milk, from the red heifer. And mix in a little white milk for fun. Ooh, that would be so nice. So now that we know where all the milks come from dairy cows, beef comes from beef cows, chocolate comes from chocolate cows. We're on a roll here. So do we have any questions or any more comments? Okay. Dinner is ready. Oh, you've been cooking all this time, huh? Are you making that carne asada at your house, Jay? Did you make enough for all of us? I'm not sure what breed those cows are either. I don't raise cows. I just look at them in their field as we drove by. Well, see, you should have gotten strawberry milk out of them. That's where it comes from, Shlomo. Now, you're welcome to stick around. If you're in the mood to read, there's a lot of other fun little rules in this parsha, and all kinds. The rabbis wanted to try and make sure they covered everything. And there was one other one that was a really great one. Let me find the right page here. Oh yeah, here it is. Chapter 23, verse 5. When a fire is started and spreads to thorns, so that stacked, standing, or growing grain is consumed, he who starts the fire must make restitution. So there we go. Make restitution if you start a fire. Could be, no, I don't think they're Holsteins. I've seen Holsteins. They're kind of spotty. Because I went to the dairy out west. And Holsteins are spotty. They're not cookie cows. I'll ask my sister. She might know. She has cows. I'm not a farmer. You are always welcome, Ellie, all right? Late or early or whatever. And we translate difficult typing very well. So we're glad to have you. And hopefully we will see you next week when we continue, because next week we have the exciting Teruma. That's the donations. Talk about put another nickel in that little pushka tin. Donate, donate, donate. So I love Teruma. It's all about donating. Well, good night to you. Hopefully we'll see you next week. It's been fun. You're welcome, David. It's been a fun parsha. Yeah, you had to be a farmer. A lot of these have to do with the land. These are really thoroughly discussed in both the Babylonian Talmud, but more so in the Jerusalem Talmud, because the Jerusalem Talmud comes from the Jerusalem. And so these were a lot of the farming laws they had. But some of them are the common sense. Like if you dig a hole and your ox falls in, you have to make restitution. If you start a fire and it burns up all the neighbor's stuff, you have to make a restitution. Lots of good stuff. So, yeah. Now I'm going to sign out of out of Ustream so that we can close that, and I will be back.